Hi, everyone. I'm going to do my typical intro, but I also want to give a full disclaimer / warning before starting this episode. This episode has themes of termination, of abortion. There are a couple points where we talk pretty graphically about the actual procedure that one has to go through in order to take out a baby when someone is pregnant, whether that baby is alive or not alive. So I just want you to be aware that if this is something that would be upsetting to you, that you can skip over that part, or this might not be the episode for you. That being said, I had the real privilege of interviewing Clare for this episode. She is an outspoken advocate for abortion and abortion rights, and she talks about how she had an abortion when she was very young. She never thought she would also have to go through a termination for medical reasons. What was striking to me through this conversation was how much even she, a person who is a fierce, again, I'm going to use the word advocate, of women having the ability for the right to choose, how much she grieved over this pregnancy and how hard it was for her. You'll hear it in the story. It's interesting because there were a number of moments as she was sharing her experience where I thought I was talking to a woman who lost her baby in as a stillbirth, that the deep grieving and the being so torn up about all of it. I mean, people are complicated. You can be a fierce advocate of lots of things, and also it can still be deeply personally upsetting and be a hard experience to go through. These are hard things, but I am so deeply indebted to Clare for sharing her story. Take a listen. Hi, I'm Dr. Aimee Barron, the founder and executive director of the nonprofit I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. On this podcast, I invite different people to join me in conversations about infertility, pregnancy loss, infant loss, surrogacy, adoption, and so much more. We laugh, we cry, and we challenge the Jewish community to think differently about a topic that has been shrouded in secrecy and shame for so long. So join me as we talk away the taboo. Okay, everybody. So I've been really looking forward to having this conversation with Clare for a long time. I think you and I initially spoke, I want to say maybe it was even November, maybe even earlier than that, sometime in the fall. And I it's not often that I'm introduced to a person who is open about their experiences with termination for medical reasons. I hear lots and lots and lots of stories of people who have gone through this, and the majority of the time they want to stay anonymous. And I think I actually want to talk about that first, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're going to get into your background and all of what makes you who you are, but could you kind of center the people and center me actually here? Why was this important for you to have this conversation with your name attached to it? This is a topic that brings up a lot of very strong emotions for many people for many reasons. So I'm curious, why did you want to talk about this?
I feel like I can't talk about that without explaining that I have been talking about abortion publicly long before I had a termination for medical reasons. And I know that might bring up a lot more complicated emotions for people, but it just is a part of my life. So I had an elective abortion a little over a decade ago, and I drove past a protester who had some really vile and inaccurate imagery on the poster of what was supposed to be an aborted fetus that was just offensive for everyone to see. And something lit up inside me. And I essentially, I just started counter protesting next to this man who is often at an intersection right near me still, a decade later. And I started talking about my abortion publicly. And then several years later, I had to terminate a wanted pregnancy, and it didn't really feel that different. I think sometimes people want to separate elective abortions and terminations for medical reasons, but I really think that everything is on a spectrum of loss and tough choices. And I just um, wanted to give another perspective. And it was a perspective I never thought I would be a part of. I think because I was so young and healthy, and that just wasn't even on my radar that I could be making a decision like that. But I think that um, doing so anonymously, I really value anyone's story. But I think that if you can do it with your name on it, it's important to do it. Because it makes it a little less abstract for people. Like, oh, this is a real person. This is a mom at my preschool. This is my neighbor. This is my daughter-in-law. Hearing someone's name attached to something like this, I think does make it um, less of an idea to people and more like, oh, this happens to actual people that I talk to every day. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting with that right now, and I'm thinking, of course, like, of course, it's I'm in the business, so to speak. With I was supposed to have a baby, the organization that I run and this podcast, I'm in the business of telling stories, and the the telling of the story is what makes people feel less alone. It's that like, oh, there's someone else out there that actually went through something very similar to what I've gone through, and I thought I was the only person on earth that ever did this. And just hearing the story certainly is enough, but you're 1,000% right. I mean, uh, of course, when there's a name attached and when it's, oh, it's someone that could be like living around the corner from me, or I recognize myself in her, or that pieces of that story or her background, it like, of course it resonates so much more. Um, yeah. Okay, so now I just had to ask that first because it felt like that's where we need to start. But okay, now we need to do the rest of the stuff. Okay, so let's go back. Hi, Claire. It's nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Thank you for
um,
having me.
it's nice to meet you in this way again. Um, can you tell people, I, you know, I love to center the conversations with, tell us a little bit about who you are, how you grew up, like where you fall in the Jewish community, just like, when and already I'm hearing, even in your little bit of an introduction, obviously there's a longer sort of lead up to this event, so to
Mhm.
speak, that we're here to talk about today. Like, just center us. Give people a little bit of a window into your life, kind of
Yeah.
before.
Um, so I grew up in Ferndale. I still live in Ferndale. I grew
Ferndale
up
where? Ferndale where?
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
Sorry, I'm thinking so centered in Metro Detroit. I grew up in Ferndale, Michigan, so right outside of Detroit, and I grew up going to the Birmingham Temple, which is a humanistic synagogue where my mom grew up, and my grandparents were some of the first members when it was founded in the 60s.
Wow.
Um, and I grew up going to Jewish summer camp. I didn't grow up in a particularly religious house because one aspect, or the main aspect of humanistic Judaism, is that it emphasizes the culture rather than God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but being Jewish was and still is a big part of my identity. And I almost feel like the lack of emphasis on God made it almost um not more important in my life, but I think that the aspect or the focus on culture like resonated with me more as a kid because there's such a focus on it. And then I ended up becoming a mom way younger than I ever thought I would at 19. And it turned out I loved being a mom. Um, so my husband and I had our second daughter 2.5 years later when I was 22. And I was just like, this is not how I pictured my life, but I love it. My husband I met on Tinder, and
I love that.
yeah,
So great.
we met
So
on
great.
Tinder, but then a couple dates in I said, does the Birmingham Temple mean anything to you? And he was like, of course. My grandparents were some of the founding members, and my dad grew up there and I grew up there until they moved to a different temple, and we found out that our grandparents knew each other well, and that
Wow.
my mom and her siblings were in a carpool with my father-in-law and his siblings, and there's just
So great.
like a deep tie. It's a pretty niche thing. humanistic Judaism, it's like a very small sect of Jews. So to have that connection early on was really cool. So
It's like speaks to the power of Jewish geography. Like,
yes,
by the way, do
it
you
really does.
actually we
Yeah.
were in carpool together?
And
It's
to
just oh great.
yeah, and to meet when I met his grandparents, they were telling me about my mom's mom who I had never met. Um so that was really cool. So yeah, I am a mom, I'm a runner, um I'm a reader. I'm just a normal mom. I never expected to be a young mom, but I am. And so I think I always knew I wanted kids, but I always had the idea of 3 in my head. So it was the pregnancy we terminated would have been our 3rd. We now have a 3rd living child, Maya, who rounded out. So we have Eloise, Noah, and Maya. We have 3 girls. But yeah, I had an untraditional, I think, path to motherhood, but now I'm like all in and I love being a mom and I stay at home with them. So
It's amazing. It's amazing. Sometimes like we plan and we plan and we plan, right? And life turns out, I think more often than not the way we planned.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm hearing that, and I think it's amazing. But take us back. I mean, you started this off saying you had you had a pregnancy that you terminated and
Mhm.
and like walking past or driving past
Yeah.
this protest line. Can you take us back to that experience? When did that happen, I guess, in the
Um,
family building as you were growing your family?
that happened before I met my husband.
Okay.
It was over a decade ago. But it was soon after my first abortion. And there's just a middle-aged guy who has really graphic, really offensive signs, who stands around in Metro Detroit, often like next to when you get on the highway, like somewhere very visible. And I just saw it one day and um he had a sign that said all women regret their abortions. And I was just like, that's not that's not true. The hubris just baffled me that he was so confident in his messaging. So I drove to CVS and made my own sign that said I don't regret my abortion. And I stood next to him for a long time. And then I posted about it on Facebook and it went kind of semi viral. And I started just protesting. I had the sign in my car anytime I saw him. And as recently as a year ago, he's there a lot. It's like,
Wow.
I asked him one time, do you have a job? And he was like, yeah, well, this is my second job. But I think that talking about it openly after that, it shocked me how many people in my life started coming to me and telling me they had an abortion, like all sorts of people in my life. People, I think that we have this idea of who has abortions and it's not accurate because in reality, all sorts of people have abortions. Super religious people have abortions, people who are not religious, young people, older people. A lot of people who have abortions are already parents. So I think that we have this idea that it's just young people being irresponsible, but in reality, there are so many reasons people have abortions, and I talking about it openly made that so much more real for me. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I mean, this is the work, a lot of the work that you do, but there is often, I think in so many different um, issues, like it's kind of presented in this black and white way, right? Where like
yeah,
all people who do this must be like this, or all people who don't do this must be like that. And the world is full of gray, like the
yeah.
world is full of all kinds of things that you don't expect. So right, of course that makes sense. Um, Claire, are you comfortable talking about that first abortion and what led up to it and your decision making around it?
Um, yeah, I can talk about it briefly, but it really was an uncomplicated, honestly, thing for me. I just um was 17. I had a summer camp boyfriend. I was pregnant and didn't want to be anymore. And looking back, the most complicated thing about terminating that pregnancy was honestly the loopholes that the state of Michigan has you jump through. um, I think that sometimes it's not that I didn't think about that decision. I think one common misconception is that people flippantly make choices. I don't know any woman who's flippantly made any choice about her fertility or reproductive decisions, whatever it is. But I had to look at an ultrasound. I had to read a bunch of misleading information about abortions that'll give me cancer, that I won't continue on to be a mother if I want to, all sorts of things that are actually now no longer on the books in Michigan. You no longer have to do a lot of those. Um, but it
For those of you who are not watching this specific clip, I'm actually just sitting here and my mouth is open, listening to
you have to, yeah,
like
you have
what?
to, um, yeah, you have to have a mandatory counseling session where the counselors are given scripts that are really misleading, and I'm sure they don't really even want to be reading them, but the state of Michigan required them. And although it's no longer on the books here, there are loopholes that people have to jump through in other states that are like
Yeah,
a mandatory waiting periods that can be up to 72 hours, all sorts of things that make it harder. And they're also, I think, belittling because a lot of them imply that um a woman isn't thinking hard about the choice, like
right.
let's make you wait 72 hours to think harder about it when really it, it I did not want to be pregnant. I was a teenager. Even though I ended up being a young mom, it was a choice that I made. And I think that a lot of people think abortion is just for people who hate kids, but I wanted to be a mom, and really that abortion let me be a mom really not that long after, but with the right partner, and it felt like the right time. So, and I now have the family I have now because of it.
Yeah, yeah. Is there? I'm asking specific questions because I'm going to ask the same ones, in the with this next experience that you're going to talk to us about. Experience. I don't even know that I'm using the right words here, but when we're talking about the termination, but I'm curious, was there a discussion like within the framework of like humanistic Judaism, or was there a discussion with your parents? Like, did they agree, disagree, support? Like, was there any kind of like, hey, by the way, was it your decision? Was it a discussion? Like, I'm just curious about the
No,
process.
it was my decision. I have a pretty private family. Um, so I had to tell my mom because there's actually also a parental consent law. Parents can deny their children abortions. No longer in Michigan, but in other places they can do that. And um, I don't think it was much of a conversation because I mean, if I were to continue that pregnancy, I would certainly have my parents' support, but I think it made all the sense in the world to her why I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, my
Right.
parents were 38 when I was born. This was a total aberration from our family patterns of, when people start families. Um, and I didn't really feel the need to consult anyone else, or it felt so obvious. To be honest, it just
Yeah,
felt very, very clear.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
have no
I
regrets
love
about that.
I no, I really love the fact that like I think that there are other people who are 17 or even other ages who don't feel the same level of confidence in their decisions about this or really even much more mundane things like whatever, whether they're driving or which college they're going to, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
there are lots of other people who need a lot more guidance in terms of making decisions in their life. And so it speaks a lot to the person that you were then and also in the way that they raised you. The fact that you felt like you had enough like wherewithal yourself, like this is the right decision. This is what I want to do. This is what I need to do for my life. Like I think it's incredibly empowering, like just to hear someone who's 17 who just knew that this is what you needed to do.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Okay. So obviously went through that experience and then you became an activist, so to speak, and really spoke up after this man was giving out all this false information and in an inflammatory way. And I like I love that. Like I'm just seeing the imagery of like, I don't regret my abortion. Like I love that. Um And then, okay, so you told us part of the rest of the story, or the next pieces. you met your husband, got pregnant, like you started your family, and now tell us about, this pregnancy, the one that you ended up needing to terminate.
Yeah. So I um got pregnant with what would have been our third baby, and we were very excited. I wanted 3 kids. I did not want them far apart. Um and we were excited. We were about to move to a house that I'd always walked past and was like, I want that to be my house. Like everything was working
Yeah.
out like really well. And then I had an ultrasound, um, I think around 9 or 10 weeks. And a few days later, I was just sitting at home and got an email from my hospital's like charting system where they send you everything now. I don't know
Yep.
when that changed, but it basically said that it was actually a twin pregnancy, but that one twin had stopped growing. So I found out at in one email that it was actually twins, but that one had stopped growing, and I was mostly just I was in shock, but I was also baffled that I was receiving this in an email, and it was the weekend, so I couldn't call. Um,
I'm like, I can't. Yeah, the way medicine is nowadays is obscene. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was shocking and very upsetting, and I
And how many weeks was this ultrasound?
think
How
10.
many weeks? Okay. Okay.
Um, so I was very upset, but I was also like, there's still I was still pregnant. But it definitely felt like whiplash to find out that I was carrying twins, but also one had stopped growing. There was
Yeah.
no um yeah, there was no time to process that it was twins before we also found out that it was gonna be a singleton pregnancy. So it was very upsetting. I spent a couple weeks feeling really, really upset, but we were moving. I had 2 young kids still, and I was still focused on being pregnant. And so 2 weeks later, we had, a follow-up ultrasound to make sure that the twin who'd stopped growing, like, sometimes there can be complications with that, and that it was basically just fine still and not a risk to my health. And they were doing the ultrasound and saw the demised twin, and then they continued the ultrasound and checked the heart rate of twin A. And I don't remember the number, but I remember them reading out loud, and having been pregnant twice before, I turned to my husband, I was like, "That's too high of a number." So the ultrasound tech left the room, and I just knew that that number was not right, and she came back with the attending doctor on the phone who wasn't in, and she said that there was, a cystic hygroma present on twin A, which is a fluid pocket behind the neck, which usually indicates chromosomal abnormalities, like Down syndrome or Turner syndrome. There's a lot of others. And that also, the heart rate was very elevated, which indicates something wrong with the heart, maybe a heart defect. And I just burst into tears. And I also felt whiplash again because I thought we were there just to confirm that twin B was not, there was no issue with those remains. But then we were finding out a totally different problem.
Um, what, what, I mean, how did you, uh, what happened when I mean, obviously the emotional whiplash, but like, how did that manifest? And then like, what was the discussion like, or like, how did you even go from there?
Um, it was bizarre driving home and then just having to go home and be a mom again. But we met with a genetic counselor at the hospital a couple days later, and they gave us a much more in-depth um, idea of what was going on. Even before there was a formal diagnosis they could give us, they pretty much made it clear there was like not really a chance of a healthy full-term baby. But I just remember bursting into tears again in that room, and no one ever said, "You need to terminate this pregnancy," but it was obviously it came up, and I just remember saying, "I'm not ready to not be pregnant anymore." Um, so we kind of just I don't know, those that month or 2, it feels like a blur.
Yeah.
It felt like we kind of knew where it was headed, but I just said I couldn't make any decisions yet. So we were in this very weird, um, like, state of indecision for a few weeks, with some follow-up ultrasounds and talking to a couple more genetic counselors, but I think kept waiting for someone to tell me exactly what to do, which they don't do.
Right. And what was, I mean, can you talk about like that period of why weren't you ready? Like what was holding you back? Like was it that the information that they were giving wasn't clear, or was it that you like they weren't like, which obviously you said already, like they can't tell you what to do? Like what do you think it was about looking back?
I The information was definitely clear, but I felt like I wanted someone else to be in charge. Like, I sometimes see posts online from people saying, "The doctors tried to get me to terminate, but my baby ended up being fine," and kind of vilifying doctors. I don't think that there are doctors out there who tell you to terminate. They give you the information and let you know your options, but every doctor was very kind and very forthright and made things very clear, but we did, um, genetic testing after that ultrasound that showed the elevated heart rate and the cystic hygroma, and it didn't show any genetic abnormality, but it only tests for a certain number. There can be so many more wrong that you would need to do further testing for, but the genetic counselor made it clear, like, you don't really need a formal diagnosis to know that with a fluid pocket that big, uh, it is a poor diagnosis. Um, and with the heart rate. So, I don't know exactly what I mean, I couldn't do it because, uh, the longer I didn't have any hope that things would turn around. I felt like it was made very clear and I understood. Even just the second I saw the elevated heart rate, I knew that it wasn't gonna be okay.
Right.
But it really was something I could put off. I was just like it felt like the way that you put off making a dentist appointment. You're like except, catastrophically worse, but
Yeah.
I could ignore it for a while. And I let myself for a few weeks, but then I talked with one of the maternal fetal medicine doctors that we've been seeing on the phone, and she was like, "The longer you wait, the harder it gets physically, the more expensive it gets." Um, so I ended up doing it, but um, I just really didn't want that to be the answer to this problem, even though I was very sure it needed to be. I wasn't under some illusion that things would be better. I just couldn't make the call to schedule that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about like during those weeks, how was your husband? Who else knew that you were going through this? Like what were other people saying, or how were they trying to, hold this information and deal with it?
Um, my husband was upset, obviously. I do feel like I kept wanting him to be like more vocally upset almost. And he definitely was upset, but I do think that I felt a rift between us because I was pregnant. It just felt much more acute for me, I think. I also think it felt surreal for him, and we also were in such a busy couple months of our life that um, I don't think that he could fully process what was going on. Um, and our parents and siblings knew, and a handful of friends. I don't think anyone did a great job being supportive, to be honest. I have I'm close with my family, but we're kind of emotionally private and rarely discussed it, and they were kind about it, but, I think that people thought I was fine because it's not like I was openly crying all the time. I kind of was on autopilot. I felt like I could not even sometimes it felt like I could think about it in an abstract way and not fully tap into, like, how I was actually feeling. I was, um, in this bizarre state, like, I was just pretending I was fine, and it also was weird because there were these several weeks where we were waiting for no great reason. I mean, it was just, like, this weird in-between state. Um, we had some friends over at one point, and they were like, "How's the pregnancy going?" And we told them, and, um, the husband said, "Well, that's it might be a good thing because 'cause you're, like, in the middle of a move and it's about to be the holidays." Like we didn't have time for me to be pregnant or something.
Oh, wow. Like I was like waiting to hear what the end of that sentence was. How is this a good thing? Like what I couldn't
No.
imagine what the end of that was. Yeah. Yeah.
I think most people just didn't know what to say. I also think that some people maybe thought it was sad, but not really that big a deal because we had 2 living children, so they're like and I was young, so they're like, "You've got a lot of years left."
Yeah, like that. Yeah. And was there any pressure from anyone like, why are you still holding on to this? Like you should just like terminate already. Like what are you waiting for? Like it's not gonna there's no miracle that's happening here.
No, I had one friend who was just, like, pragmatic about it, and she was like, "The longer" kind of like what the doctor said. She said, "The longer you wait, the harder it'll be," but it was not pressure, I think, um, that was actually one of the more helpful things, to hear, but no, there was no pressure for that.
And then I'll ask the question exactly the opposite way. Was there anyone who, whether they knew that, you had had this experience, you had, an abortion when you were younger or not, regardless, was there anyone who was like, you know, you should just wait and like, maybe everything will be fine. And, as you were saying, like these miracle stories that you read on Google and or wherever else, like, was there anyone like that?
No,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. I'm grateful for you also. Um, okay. So I guess the question is, you know, what was the thing that finally you were like, okay, I now it's now time.
I don't remember there being a certain thing, I really don't remember, but it just, um I don't know, but I made the appointment and I was talking to the genetic counselor on the phone and she was like, "I'm gonna send you a bunch of forms to print and I need you to print them at a certain time, like soon, so that the waiting period because regardless of the reason that you were terminating a pregnancy at that time, the state of Michigan has you wait 24 hours." And then I had to read the same paperwork saying that I might not be able to be a mom if I have a termination, which is not true. I was already a mom.
Hi everyone. It's Amy. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say that if talking away the taboo means something to you, if you've listened to an episode and felt less alone, more seen, or more understood, please support us so we can continue doing this important work. Everything we offer, this podcast, our support groups, our resources, all of them are completely free. And that's intentional, actually, because we never want someone to have to choose between getting help and affording it. But truthfully, we can't do this without your help. So if you're in a position to give even just a little, it really helps keep us going. It helps someone else find the support that they need to. So please donate at iwassupposedtohaveababy.org/donate. It's really easy and it really makes a difference. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of this community.
That I might not be able to be a mom if I have a termination, which is not true. I was already a mom.
Yeah.
Um, and that I could choose adoption and a lot of really offensive stuff. So she was like, "Don't even look at it, just sign at the bottom." And I had initially scheduled a appointment for a D&E, which would just have been a short surgery, but I went in for the initial appointment. That's the day prior, just to talk to the OB and do some preliminary stuff. And she was a doctor who I'd spoken to and seen multiple times. And she said, "You don't seem like you can do this." Um, she said, like, "It seems like emotionally this is not a good choice for you." And she said, "What about doing a labor and delivery? You can, at a certain point, a termination can be done through an induction, just like you would with um, a full-term pregnancy." And she said she thought that might be a better option for me, so I'd be able to hold him, and it would just be, like, more of a birth instead of, like, a, surgery when you just wake up no longer pregnant. So that's what we ended up doing.
And did you had that been something you had even considered before, or
Not really, because I'm not sure if it was ever presented as an option for us. It may have not been earlier because I wasn't I may have not been pregnant enough.
right?
I was 18 weeks when we ended up doing that, and yeah, I knew that that could happen, but I don't think that that was necessarily a part of the conversation early.
Yeah,
But one thing that had really upset me was the thought of going under anesthesia and waking up not pregnant anymore.
I want to explain just for people who aren't familiar with the procedure of a D&E. Basically, a D&E is a procedure called a dilatation and evacuation. The When you're over 12 weeks, 12 or 13 weeks, and in your second trimester, the procedure to take out a pregnancy is that instead of when it's earlier on, when it's in the first trimester, it's called a DNC, which is dilatation and curettage, meaning dilatation, meaning that like your cervix when you're pregnant is closed. It's only when you go into labor and the baby is supposed to come out is when your cervix dilates. So what they need to do to take the baby out or the fetus out, however, whatever term you want to use here, what they have to do is they have to dilate the cervix, they have to open the cervix. And then when it's a first trimester pregnancy, they call it a curettage, where it's scraping. I am just going to say the word as it is, where they're basically taking instruments and they're scooping the baby out and taking it out, versus when it's second trimester or older, if you're doing a surgical procedure, they still have to dilate, but they call it an evacuation because the baby the baby is already formed, the fetus is already formed at that point and has to come out. So they use a different term. It's not really like scooping. It's more they're having to pull. And I will put warning signs on this episode actually before um when we publish it, but I think it's important to also share with people that in a DNE and an evacuation, it is a surgical procedure, and they don't take the fetus or the pregnancy or the baby out whole. They take the baby out and it ends up being in pieces. And I'm hearing I'm hearing this doctor, as you just said, Claire, who said
Mhm,
to you, maybe it would be better for you if you had the opportunity to labor and deliver the baby, and then you could hold the baby. And
mhm.
I hear from many people, even if they don't have to terminate, even if it's just, a stillbirth or a loss, that they do choose to terminate after, excuse me, they do choose to labor after a certain point because they do want that option as opposed to
Mhm.
just waking up and not being pregnant anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
How was that for you?
It was terrible. Every provider who came in the room assured me that it would be probably a pretty quick process because I'd already had 2 deliveries. And they were like, "You'll be home within 24 hours at the latest," but it just wasn't working. I don't know why, but I got there on Thursday morning, and we had Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Yeah, we left Sunday at, like, midnight. Um, it was just a really long, physically and emotionally grueling process. I was just in bed for days. I got dozens of cervical checks, multiple Foley bulbs, um, a lot of medicine. And every attempt didn't work until I was given Pitocin on the last day that I was there, and that worked very quickly. And I
Pitocin, just to interrupt you for a second, Pitocin is a medicine that helps contract the uterus, which they give to people who are birthing to kind of move the process along.
Yeah, so that worked pretty quickly. I was being given morphine. The options for pain medication are obviously more robust for termination because there's no risk to the fetus. So I was given a lot of pain medication that was making me sick. But I wanted an epidural after the Pitocin started because it was really painful. I had not had Pitocin before or an epidural. And the anesthesiologist came in, and I remember my husband was wearing a shirt that said the Schwitz, which is a bathhouse that he frequents. It's just like his most special place in the world. Actually, it's like um, it's his spot, and so he just happened to be wearing a shirt, and the anesthesiologist was like, "Oh, the Schwitz, I like it there." And I just, for some reason, that's one of the comments that stuck with him forever. Like he still says, like, why did they?" It just was like such a
Yeah.
acutely tense moment and so stressful for both of us, and it seemed like it felt like he didn't know what was going on, even though I know he did.
Total non sequitur and totally inappropriate
Yeah,
in the moment. Yeah.
yeah, and there yeah, so it was a really terrible few days. I was at a teaching hospital, which I totally understand, that residents need to learn, but it felt hard to have people learning on you, when you're having a really terrible experience. And I remember at one point, an attending came in with multiple, not even residents, but they were just medical students doing, like, practice rotations, and I was like, "Why are you here?" Um, so I felt kind of like, on display, and, um, it was also a very blurry time for me because I had been given so much morphine. I felt really out of it, and I can't really fully remember the moments leading up to when I actually did deliver. I don't remember when it went from me having an epidural and the Pitocin creating progress. I just remember finally delivering and shaking uncontrollably for a long time. The post-labor shakes happen even when it's not a full-term delivery. I remember, like, just my husband feeding me applesauce. It's just the saddest memory, but he was very sweet. And my husband looked at him before they brought him over and told me, what to expect. He was like, "He's very, very small." His skin was red, which isn't what I was picturing. Um, and so I ended up holding him, and I remember after holding him for I have no idea how long it was. It feels very fuzzy. I remember saying, like, "You have to take him now or I won't be able to leave the hospital. Like, I won't be able to give him back if you don't take him now."
What did you name him?
Henry.
Who is he named for?
Isn't named for anyone. It was weird. we never discussed a name. I just, like, started the name, like, I feel like I did not decide it, which sounds ridiculous. Um, I was just like, his name is Henry." I was like, "Is that okay?" And my husband said, "Sure." I can't explain it, it was just his name. I had, like, started subconsciously thinking of him as that name, so that's what we chose. Um, yeah, and then I said they asked if I wanted, the clothes that they put him in and his footprints and handprints, and I said yes, and the day after we left the hospital, I realized we never were given those, and we never were, so they forgot that.
And they never did them?
No.
Oh. Oh, Claire.
Yeah. So I just picture
Oh, co
his little outfit in the trash somewhere. I was like, "Do they wash it and another baby is put in it? Does it go in the trash?" I just, like, will never stop thinking about that.
oh.
Yeah.
Do you have pictures of him?
Yeah, I do. My husband, like, archived them on the Google Photos app because sometimes it would just be, like, memories, and it would put those photos in a slideshow of, like, me and my husband or, on the anniversary of it. It's, like, 1 week
Yeah.
ago or, a year ago this week, and they're hard to look at. Yeah, and my biggest regret is not having those things. And for a while, I was upset with myself for not remembering, but I was in an insane daze. Like, I've never felt that out of it mentally.
Of course. Of course, and also your husband was trying to take care of you, and I mean, it's just, you know, unfortunately, I've heard this happen to other families who have birthed a stillborn, and, sometimes if I have an opportunity to speak to the families beforehand, before I know they're going in, I always suggest to them, like, please have somebody else, not you or your husband or your partner, have somebody else responsible for
Yeah.
that and make sure that because you're not going to be able to do that yourself. Like you're just, it's just, it's not possible. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Um, did you bury him?
No, I wanted we considered that. I felt like I needed something physical at home because I wasn't given anything. So my husband's good friend, who, um, is a funeral director, picked him up and had him cremated, and it took us 3 years, um, to pick up his remains, but we now have them at home. Um, it it was another thing, it was almost like an appointment you don't wanna make, we just kept putting it off. I could not go pick them up. My husband could not go pick them up. My best friend offered to get them, which was very nice, obviously, but felt wrong. My dad asked, and finally my husband got them, just a couple months ago. So 4 years, actually. Yeah.
And where are they now?
They're in our family room, and I almost feel like if if someone were to know what that was, it would almost be weird because people have been so uncomfortable with this. So I was gonna put them somewhere more private, but I don't really care.
Yeah, now it's, as you said, it's 4 years, and I hear just based on the way you described, even like the delay in picking up the remains, I hear the pain still. I mean, which obviously makes so much sense. Um, can you talk a little bit about like the immediate aftermath even and the pieces after? And I'm also curious how old your kids were at the time and what you told them.
Mhm. Um, our, oldest daughter was 3.5, and our youngest was 1, so she didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Um, one hard part of this is that I was still nursing my 1-year-old, and I know, sometimes pregnancy can make, um, milk supply dwindle or just, cease completely, but she was still happily nursing. But then when I went to the hospital, a friend dropped off some milk for her because I hadn't been pumping, and they gave me a pump at the hospital, and I realized my milk was gone, like, completely. So somehow I did not know because I never pumped, I was always with my baby. I had no idea how long she had been not getting milk. She was obviously eating a ton of solids. She was almost a year, but that was very stressful to find out,
Yeah.
and we also lost our nursing relationship, and I my, um the doula who was present at my first 2 births was texting me, and she was like, "Well, luckily your milk will come back after you deliver," and I don't know why, but it didn't, so that abruptly ended, that relationship with my 1-year-old, and so that was hard, but, I didn't really have to explain anything to her, and she had a few weeks until she was 1, and she took to formula and then milk fine, but that was really hard for me, when I got home and realized I couldn't nurse her anymore, and my 3.5-year-old, it's bizarre looking back, I don't know if she knew why we were at the hospital. I really can't remember, I think because the pregnancy the prognosis started looking bad so early on, she may have not even known I was pregnant, and it's bizarre that I can't even remember, but that time period feels like such an insane blur. Like, when I look at pictures from October to December 2021, I'm just like, "What?" So, I don't know what we told her, but I she's 7.5 now and doesn't know about that. I'm sure one day they will, but the immediate homecoming was terrible. It was terrible. I That was probably the worst month of my life, December 2021. I just felt like, again, I was on total autopilot. I highly doubt it seemed like anything if someone didn't know what was happening, I'm sure I seemed totally normal. I just felt yeah, autopilot is the phrase that just keeps coming to mind, and I felt like only once in a while could I actually think fully about it, like, I could tuck it away or, like, compartmentalize in this very effective way, and only once in a while was I like, "Oh my gosh, that actually happened." It was, like, a very, um, bizarre way of feeling, and then we had some family members who were incredibly unkind after, um, who were I won't go into the whole story, but just said all the wrong things, did all the wrong things, and I, didn't speak to some family for a really long time because it felt like I couldn't even look at them without feeling like ire. Like, the most upset I have ever been at somebody was, like, the callousness that they treated me with after that.
I'm not asking for specifics,
Yeah.
but I'm curious about, like, the 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 tone or, like, the theme of it. Were the remarks because they couldn't understand your grief
Mm.
and were just expecting you to move on? Were the remarks like, "How could you terminate a pregnancy?" Like, what was the theme of it,
Um,
of
it was
them?
it was more it was less about what actually happened and more about, um, other rifts and petty disagreements that they chose not to set aside. Like, even the day after I got
Oh,
home from the hospital, there were fights about time spent together and who's seeing our children more. Just
wow.
no one was questioning my decision. It felt like no one was not no one. It felt like some family members were not seeing me as a full human being who was suffering a really tremendous loss. It felt like people thought it was just back to normal and they could pick very petty fights and, um, yeah, it was bizarre because it really was not about what happened. It was that they were pretending it wasn't and, um, treating me poorly the normal way.
Yeah, I mean, ha ha. Yeah, right. The normal way, the normal way. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, do you think I'm just like looking back? Do you think I think I know the answer to this, but do you think it would have been different if you had a stillbirth instead of a termination, or like these are people that just like can't hold emotional complexity or grief and just it wouldn't have mattered.
I think that it would have been I don't think it would have fully mattered. I still think that certain family dynamics are gonna happen regardless.
Yeah.
I do think that, one part of, um, early or, like, in the middle of pregnancy loss, like, what I experienced is that it's not as visible as a stillbirth is to other people. No one saw me, like, 40 weeks pregnant, and no one has seen the photos of me holding, like, a 6-ounce fetus, So I think that, even though I have talked about it publicly, it's honestly more common for me to do something like this, like, talk about it very publicly than it is to talk about it with, like, family and friends on a low level. So I think it would potentially be different in that it would be more visible and less abstract to people. Like, I've never sat down with my whole family and explained the 4 days that I was in the hospital and, I
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Like I appreciate the way you said that, it's almost like it's easier. I don't, maybe easier is not necessarily the term, but almost, the conversations that you can have at large about these issues are sometimes okay, maybe easier is the right word, like easier to have than with people immediately in your own life who are bringing all of their own idiosyncrasies and the past like history of
Mhm.
supposed faults and all the things or whatever. Like I hear that. I hear that.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't say it's, um the lack of understanding is all my family and friends, it's not all on their plate. I also, even though I speak about abortion publicly, I do sometimes feel awkward in I'm not a big feelings talker. I really am not, and, so it does feel easier to talk. It's easier for me to stand on the side of the road with a sign than it is to speak candidly with one friend, you know? Um, so that's part of it, but I do feel that, um, people didn't know what to say or do, and this 2 Decembers ago on the anniversary of his death, I texted my family in a group chat and said, something like, "Today is the anniversary of Henry's death, and I know that it might seem abstract to you or you may have not thought about it, but he was like a real baby that I held, and it's important to me that you say something." Um, so this year, um, my sister and both my parents texted me and my husband, and I got pictures of yard sites lit, and it I didn't love having to ask, but I did, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is unfortunately there is a certain amount of education that like look, I do and we do as an organization out loud,
Mm,
big, publicly, communally, about what people should do, what they can do, and what they should not do, ideally. Um, but there also needs to be those explicit, like one-on-one, like, hey, I actually need you to show up for me.
yeah,
I like people like as much as we would hope that people would realize that this would be a hard day, right? It's you sometimes have to just say like, actually, I need you to show up, like, and I need you to do this. Period. Like, I need to
yeah,
school you, and then you hope that they remember, right? Like,
yeah.
and yeah, I um, so I guess my question here, as we're kind of, it's not that we're coming to an end of this, but that I I I as we're winding down your story, your experience here about this, when did you think that, like, when did you get the thought that, like, okay, I think I can do this again now? Like, you always said you wanted to have 3 kids,
Mhm,
and 3 kids here earthside,
mhm.
and Henry is not. When did you feel that you had the ability to try again?
Um, when was that? 6 or 7 months after, I felt like, I was waiting for some feeling of resolution, and I was like, "It is not gonna come." Um, and I wanted another baby more than I wanted to wait for, like, I don't know if, I was gonna get what I was looking for waiting. Like, um,
What I that's actually what I was gonna ask you. What were you looking for? What was that resolution? What did that look
um,
like? Or what did
I
you
think
think
I
it
think
could
I
be?
had I think I had an idea that if we waited long enough, I wouldn't have a stressful, anxiety-filled, subsequent pregnancy. And then I was just like, "I don't think that's feasible. I'd like to have another baby, and I'd like to try." Um, so I got pregnant in November of 2022, and our daughter Maya was born in July, and it was extraordinarily stressful, and she was, um, growing behind schedule, and then there was some very specific rare issue that they thought might be a problem, so I was back to seeing MFM, or maternal fetal medicine doctors, and I had amniocentesis that
Wow.
went well, but it's just like I I I never felt particularly I would be excited about my pregnancies, obviously, but I did not feel, super attached, like, I have never felt so attached before birth to this last pregnancy. I, like, would be up all night sobbing, thinking about that pregnancy not continuing, but, it did, and, it was a really great redeeming birth. She was born, en call, which is, in her bag of waters. It didn't burst,
Wow.
which was really cool, so we named her and special, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" So we named her Maya, for Maim, which
Yeah.
means water, and she's our mermaid baby. That's what we call her because they call babies born in call mermaid babies, and
Yeah.
she's really
And
wonderful.
just want to spell that for people, if people don't know. Call, so En, is it right? Caul, right? Like
Yeah,
call, yeah. Like meaning, like, I think it's Latin. I think
probably.
maybe. Like in waters, like when you're born, when your bag of waters, when your amniotic sac is intact.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very unusual and amazing.
yeah, and she definitely did not fix things, but she is the most perfect, scrumptious baby. Like, I'm about to pick her up, and I am addicted to her. So, um, it is not her birth was not a fix, but I do think that when I talk about our termination for medical reasons, I one part of it is that she would not have been born. Yeah, so, um, it let us, continue our family, and I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, yeah. I, I'm curious. You know, she's she's 2 now,
Just
right?
doing Yeah,
Right, 2 plus. And this experience happened. Henry was born, right, in 2021, you said?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking about, like, 4.5 years ago, basically.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious, when did you start speaking out about that? Like, you were always very vocal about abortion, but when did you start speaking out about TFMR, and, like, how and why? And why?
Like 2 weeks after it happened,
Really?
honestly.
Really?
Um,
I mean,
and
not
for
surprising based on
Yeah,
this conversation, but, like, yeah.
yeah, and for
In the
the
midst of your, like, deep grieving, like,
Yeah.
to be clear. Yeah.
Um, I think I don't know, it was just a given for me. I think that sometimes in activism for termination for medical reasons, I think that sometimes people, um, understandably try to separate it from, regular abortions, like I said earlier, and um, I think that's a mistake because I think it ends up stigmatizing everyone more. So I don't know, I feel that I have had it both ways, and I honestly think both were just as valid. I know people might not understand that, and that's okay. Um, but I think both were just as valid and important for my life now. And I also think because I feel safe and comfortable, even though it's not always easy to attach my name to this subject, it's something I need to do because so many people are not in a position where they could do that even if they wanted to. I don't have to worry about my job. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I I have supportive friends and family. I there's just so many reasons that I'm able to speak publicly with my name attached, which I think is important that this just felt like an obvious continuation.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like, there's no specific quote unquote blowback from you being public about it. So,
Yeah.
therefore, and you already had a voice and were used to using your voice. So, I imagine also that probably some of it was also very healing for you.
Yeah. And the best way to find other people who have, um, been through what you've been through is to to talk about it, obviously. So,
Of course. Of course. Um, all right. I have one more like practical question, and then I just have, something to kind of wrap us up here. Um, you know, for the naysayers out there, for the people who are really like, how could you do this? This is like an immoral. You're taking a baby's life. Well, again, like I love the way you spoke about the fact that people often separate them out. Like they think that there's a big distinction, and I think you could say whether that's valid or not, but I think some people, whether people do or not, whether they separate out abortion and TFMR or they don't, to all the people who are out there saying, "How could you?" and "How dare you?" and "Why did you?" and like, if this baby was meant to be, then meant not to be, then God would. I mean, they're all the things, like all the things that
yeah.
you hear. I'm sure. Like, what is your response to that?
It's funny you ask that because over time with my activism, I spend less time thinking about naysayers and more time just validating people who have had abortions. And it's not to say that I would love to change somebody's mind.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But that's never my emphasis anymore because I don't really think it's my job. But if I were to say something, I would say that uh, I'm happy for you that you haven't been in a situation where you needed to consider those options because it can be really hard. And for some people, with a simple situation like my first abortion, it honestly wasn't that complicated. The thing that made it complicated was the stigma that has been created. But I think that the one of the most powerful ways for someone to deepen their understanding of abortion and why people choose them is when they or someone they know makes that decision, regardless of reason. So many people think it's something other people do until they do. So I'm not interested in spending a bunch of time changing people's minds, but I do think that everyone has room to grow. And I think that the biggest thing I could ask of people is to start with empathy and assume best intentions. Because I think, regardless of the issue, I believe everyone in the world is good inside and has or means to have at least good intentions. And that goes with this issue too. Listening to stories and assuming best intentions. Yeah.
I yeah, I mean, to make it human,
Yeah.
that people are human, and it's not just, these the decision that lawmakers make without like ever actually like really listening and sitting with empathy. I mean, of course. One just real final, like more mundane question that I like to ask people, just so people can get ideas. Um, when you were in the midst of your grief, like, what were the things or like something that you did that like brought you enjoyment or helped kind of center you? I mean, sometimes I hear things like, exercise or walking on the beach or like chocolate or this kind of
Yeah.
music. Like, what were those things for you that just kind of helped you?
I was gonna say eating Trader Joe's coffee ice cream.
Okay,
Uh,
amazing.
it's unfortunate now I am an avid runner and lift a lot of weights, and I feel sad for my past self when I wasn't particularly athletic, and that just wasn't a time when I worked out much, and now I think I would have fared so much better if I was a runner then.
Yeah,
It helps me now 'cause it doesn't I would say that the grief has not dissipated, and I have a lot of flashback-like experiences and certain things I'll see that trigger me. Um, Working out, I don't think there's anything like those endorphins.
totally. Totally. As someone also who started working out later in life and also post like some of my losses, the like for me, the like actually pounding of my feet on my treadmill and like the endorphin rush, like after a
Yeah,
great workout. Yeah, it's real.
yeah,
It's really real.
yeah, I did 3.5 miles before this, I'm like, "Okay, I don't
Wow.
wanna eat."
Okay, you're amazing. I can't do that. And I've also stopped running because I have a bad knee. But anyway, Claire, I, 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 I am deeply indebted to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart and your son with us. And like, look, I, I, I so much wanted to have this conversation with you because like it's in these conversations that people see themselves, as we were talking about earlier, and just that's when they have this sense of belonging finally in a time when, like, especially in an area like this that is so stigmatized, like the more people who can talk about it, just the easier it will become for other people to, whether they've done it in the past or possibly might have to consider it in the future, they'll just know that this is something real people do. And like it is an absolutely incredible thing to know that you're not alone in whatever you're going through. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments about this episode or would like to suggest a future episode, please reach out at 917-382-0422 or send us an email at info@iwassupposedtohaveababy.org or info@iwsthab.org. And please don't forget to like, rate, and review so we can continue spreading the support to the wider Jewish community.